presidency said there was an attempt yesterday to boggle the residence of Professor Ibrahim Gambari, the chief of staff to President Muhammadu Buhari. The development was confirmed by presidential spokesman Garba Shehu. According to him, the incident, which occurred in the early hours of Monday, was unsuccessful, and he went ahead to quote that the chief of staff to the president was calling the incident a foolish attempt, end of quote, to boggle his residence. The attempted attack on Gambari's residence comes amidst increasing security challenges across the country. Insurgent bandits and government have launched attacks on homes and armed camps, police stations, prisons, security checkpoints, as well as the country home of the Imo State Governor, Hope Uzodinma, the governor of Imo State Governor, I should say. While several persons have abducted, hundreds of people have been killed in recent times, while thousands of residents have also been displaced. That's only your thoughts on this.
Well, it wasn't just Professor Gambari, it was also Abubakar Mekano, who was the chief of admin staff. This was clearly audacious to go to the villa and try and launch this attempted burglary. And it just goes to the point, there was a video that Rota shared on the show about invaders in Ikoyi, which I objected to because it smacked of elitism. But the whole point is that there is no ivory tower in Nigeria. Ikoyi, the villa, all these so-called exclusive enclaves are now just as vulnerable as anywhere else. So it just goes to show the rot that has occurred in this country and the lack of security. I mean, if this is happening in the villa, then what is the rest of Abuja like? What is the rest of the country like? It's extremely worrying. I'm thankful that the attack was unsuccessful and that nobody was hurt. That's the most important thing here. But it just goes to continue to underline, and I'm sure the highlighter or pen or whatever it is broken from underlining the fact that there is zero security in this country for anybody.
All right, Dr. Bati.
Well, a few days ago, there was a story in the papers indicating that Professor Patutomi had said, well, he hoped that a day will not come when we will all wake up and a flag, a Boko Haram flag, will have been installed in the presidential villa, Aso Rock. Well, he may have said it out of an analytical, mood, but it looks like it's not too far away from what is beginning to look like a possibility. The other day, again, we were told that a truckload of motorcycle-bearing strange characters were heading towards Abuja, and schools in Abuja immediately shut down because they thought these were Boko Haram terrorists who were on their way to overwhelm the Federal Capital Territory, the seat of government. Before then, the governor of Niger State also sounded the alarm that even the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria was not safe and that Nigerians should be apprehensive for every reason possible. And now yesterday, we were told that armed robbers, well, if they are not armed robbers, Garba Shehu tried to put lipstick on it and said the burglars were the ones who made an attempt on the villa. Well, should that happen? The presidential villa is the most protected space in Nigeria. There is a whole brigades guard, they call it guard of brigades, you know, the brigades guard, that protects that villa and the 3-arm zone. That villa is situated around the 3-arm zone, the judiciary, the legislature, the presidency. Now, it's not a place that an armed robber is expected to go and approach, not even a burglar. How? I lived within the precincts of that presidential villa. I had a place on Ibrahim Taiwo, street. Now, even somebody as like an assistant, an advisor, like me, you could not even approach my place without going through from all directions. Security guards manned, security posts manned by the brigade guard, manned by the police, manned by the SSS, manned by the police. All of these units man that area within the, the 3-arm zone of Nigeria. Who is that armed robber that will have the effrontery to approach, not even to talk of going to somebody's house, either on Ibrahim Tabo Street or Suleiman Barau Street or anywhere. So what this tells us is that something terrible has gone wrong with Nigeria. If the presidential zone, if the three-arm zone is no longer safe, so who else is safe? This is a clinical explanation of why there is no security in Nigeria. Who would dare approach that presidential zone with the military presence, with the police presence, with the police presence, even as somebody living in that place? I mean, you even as a staff, as a special advisor, whatever, you will be checked at every point. The security people will not say, oh, we know his face, he works here. No, it doesn't work like that. So this looks to me like an insider job. And it says something about the level of trust, confidence, relationship within the villa and its precincts. Maybe they are not taking good care of their mates, of their cooks, of their security men. And hence these people...
blame the victim.
Well, I'm not blaming the victim. I'm just trying to understand what has happened.
You can be as kind to people as you like, and they could still betray you.
Yeah, because it looks like an insider job to me, and I hope that the commander of the Brigade of Guards will wake up. What is his job? He will allow a situation whereby pilferers, burglars, armed robbers will attack the seat of government. I hope that President Muhammadu Buhari himself, who is a security person in terms of his antecedents, will take this very seriously. He will take it as a wake-up call. The DSS, the Department of State Services, had been warning that there are certain elements who want to destabilize Nigeria, who want to cause mayhem. Well, this will seem to vindicate the Department of State Services. That certain persons are trying to undermine Nigeria. The president himself said the other day that there are some merciless persons who want to cause problems in Nigeria. Well, the president himself should see this as a wake-up call and take care of his own personal safety. We don't want to wake up tomorrow and hear that something has been stolen from the president's bedroom and that the president himself is panicking. Because if they can go as far as the chief of staff's house, then, of course, even the president himself is not safe. Now, we are told by Garuba Shehu that the chief of staff's house is within the precincts, it's not close by. That is not true. Suleiman Barau Street, where the chief of staff lives, is within the precincts of the villa. The place where the other boy, what's his name, Adamu, or what did they call him? Bashir.
Abubakar Mekano.
Yeah, or Mekano, where they live. It's also within the precincts of the villa. That's the most protected space in Nigeria. If you cannot protect the most protected space, no, in fact, I think, my next point is that, look, heads you roll. Maybe the commander of the Brigade of Guards should be changed. Maybe the head of the police in the villa should be changed. Maybe the SSS director in charge of security in the villa should be called in for questioning. I don't understand this one.
Thank you.
Because, it's not a space that you just enter.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Abati, for your insights. And Tundu, we keep talking about these issues. Hopefully something is done. Scary time for the country as regards insecurity in general. That's all on news headlines. We take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Ruth Sodiri, Michael Wilson, Adeso Amora, Aaron Akirjala to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. We'll move on to Rotus. How's it going, Rotus?
Fine, thank you, Rafai. Good morning to you. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. We begin with a pretty in-depth report from This Day newspaper, Nigeria's newspaper of record, with respect to the, Rufai, help me out here, ETO, is that correct?
ETO, yeah,
all
correct.
Right, the electronic call-up system.
ETO Nimbogwe, as the late Chief MK Abela will say.
Thank you. Yeah. So the fact that, look, the system has basically been sabotaged. This day spoke to a number of individuals at the ports talking about how the system had failed because of the human factor. They spoke with the Chief Operating Officer of the Truck Transit Park, Mr. Dayo Adeboye, the Vice President of the National Association of Licensed Customs Agents, Mr. Kayode Farinto, and each of them said that security agents in the area that have been profiting off the gridlock are not allowing this system to proceed and to work properly. As a result of that, the traffic within that area has gotten a whole lot worse in recent times. The governor has gotten involved, presidential task force has gotten involved, but it just, I guess this is a microcosm of how things in Nigeria work, to where just getting rid of the human factor when it comes to using technology to try to solve these problems, it just doesn't seem to work. And, you know, we've all talked about how, I guess, technology isn't magic. You do need for other things to be in place for these solutions put in place to work. But in-depth reports here stating that it is the human factor. Now, Governor Sanwo-Olu has said that they will name and shame, they will bring people to courts, they will show how serious they are about making sure that the ports work. But so far nothing, we haven't, no one's been named, no one's been shamed, no one's been brought forward at this point. But, I mean, this is just a perennial problem that just continues to resurface again and again. And the ports are a very critical part of the economy when you think about imports and exports, our trade balance, and what comes into the country and what goes out. So it is imperative that this situation is solved, since over 90% of items that are imported, exported through, that come into the country, go through Apapa and Tinkan and Island. I mean, there's talks of trying to move things over to Onne, Port Harcourt, and so on. But for now, this is the primary channel through which these goods are brought in. So it's as desperate. I heard, three of you talking about the security breach at Aso Rock. There's just so many emergencies in Nigeria. You can just take your pick. But this is a crisis at this point when you think about the spillover effects, the cost implications to businesses, perishable goods, but corruption. I mean, it's still the corruption factor. So I encourage everyone to read this day investigation on it. It's very in-depth. They talk to a number of individuals there. And again, we're doing our job in the media to highlight this problem. This is tech. This was supposed to make this thing as simple and straightforward as possible, to where all the drivers are supposed to line up and use this system to streamline their movement in there. But again, this human factor just keeps popping up. To S&P Global Ratings, the ratings agency has commented on First Bank and the central bank's overhaul of directors at First Bank and, of course, FBN Holdings, the holding company. In their notes which they put out, they stated that, well, they acknowledge the fact that the CBN-directed board changes at First Bank are essentially addressing governance issues. And in their ratings, they said that as far as ratings are concerned for Nigeria's financial system, governance issues continue to be corporate governance issues continue to be one of the items that I guess weighs down ratings for the banks in the system. They did, however, acknowledge the fact that the central bank, this is still a systemically important bank. Also importantly, their capital adequacy ratios, they noted the fact that it's at 17% as of 2020, above the minimum threshold of 15% put by the central bank. Also talks about particularly their non-performing loans, which was about 23 or so percent back in 2016, 2017. It's now down to about 7.7%. They see non-performing loans at First Bank averaging about 9% because of some, macroeconomic weakness and, restructuring loans for certain sectors that have issues like oil and gas, for instance. They did also state, I have to point out in the note, that the central bank was being more reactive than proactive. They also mentioned Sky Bank as well, which, of course, now Polaris, things have they've steadied, but they did state that. And that's, you'll reading this note, being more reactive than proactive is something that continues to plague the regulatory system in the country, regardless of whether it's financial services, manufacturing, or elsewhere. But by and large, like I believe it was Fitch over the weekend and a couple other ratings agencies, they've all commented, all reaffirmed the fact that this is a good move on the part of the central bank, and they will still be monitoring issues. But the key takeaway is that corporate governance in the Nigerian financial system is still an issue. And of course, that was what was highlighted by the central bank governor in his speech. So essentially, that's our update.
Great insight, Rotus. When you look at the two stories you brought forward, it's just human factor.
Exactly.
I'm not sure Standard & Poor's got the draft of all of this. That it wasn't that the central bank was just reactive. They were proactive, actually, but some people felt too big. And that's why being proactive didn't work. Because there were overtures made, people were called, people were begged not to do certain things, and all of a sudden they said, oh, damn you, who are you, the regulator? I'm going to do it. And the regulator came back hard. Just like the ATO system to human factor. Technology is supposed to make life better. It's not the solution to everything, but it's an enabler. Just do what it is. Right. That technology has told you to. And it's a straightforward call-up system. But because people want to call up money to their pockets, and there's a massive level of corruption,
right,
then nothing is done. Has it gotten to the stage where maybe we have to get behavioral psychologists to come and examine the head of this, this very corrupt people across the value chain now? Because I don't know what it is. Maybe I might just have to wake up Sigmund Freud from the dead, to come and examine the brains of these people. Because there is nothing wrong with the application we should restate.
Correct.
All that is wrong is the human beings that are there. And they can actually change. We can put more punitive measures in place. But are we going to do it?
Enforcement. That's
no,
the key, right?
They're not going to enforce it. You know why? Because corruption doesn't just stay in isolation. If it did, we'll have solved the problem of corruption. Corruption has linkages.
Right.
It has a cartel. There's always somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, and you don't want to hurt people.
Right. Step on toes.
You don't want to step on toes, and that's what happens.
Right.
So corruption has an ecosystem. The ecosystem is playing out. Are we going to say we don't know the problem with the port over the years? We know the problem, but we can't solve it because some people are bigger than the system.
Right. Well said.
Okay, very quickly, I think what is happening at the Apapa port should be linked, I guess, in terms of context, to what happened recently to the managing director of the Nigerian Ports Authority, Hadiza Bala Usman.
Yeah.
Now, one of Hadiza Bala Usman's major legacy issues was to sanitize, to modernize, the call-up system at the Apapa port. And she was on the same program. And she made that point about the electronic call-up system. Right. But since she introduced it, what we have seen is that the corruption, around the port system will not allow her. The middlemen who make profit, the security agencies who extort money, the owners of tank farms. On paper, what she proposed as managing director of the Nigerian Ports Authority looked great. Modernize the system, sanitize it, get the trucks off the road. You were not allowed to come to the port or to the pre-gate system that was in place, except you were called off. But the people who had created the corrupt system, extortionist system around that did not allow it to function. And the question to ask is, okay, these are suspension and all these allegations about how she functioned. Is there a linkage? And that, I think, is what the relevant authorities should investigate. Because invariably, it's Nigeria that loses. If the port is not functioning well, Nigeria will lose revenue.
Right.
Human beings, will also be affected. And the entire country will lose in the long run. So I think it's important to make that connection between this day story and what is happening. This rebellion, this sabotage by forces around the ports.
Indeed.
Well, what you've presented today, Rotus, is a microcosm of Nigeria and why we are where we are. And regarding the ports, you wonder who is running this country? Who exactly is the government? How can the government issue a directive and other people are just completely ignoring it? These yet to be named and shamed people who are bigger than the government. The same with CBN and that report. Yes, that report would give comfort to some of the stakeholders, but the question does remain, was it because of the removal of Mr. Adejutan that CBN then felt compelled to move? Why did CBN not act? There were non-performing internal loans. There was that non-perfection of collateral. Those were on the table, corporate governance issues, and no action was taken until that move. So it just goes to show who exactly is running the show.
Great question. Great question.
Unknown managers.
Rotus, if you ask me now, who I go ask?
Exactly. Right? Exactly. Yeah, story of Nigeria.
All right. Thank you so much, Rotus. Really appreciate it. Let's quickly go to Adeso Moro this morning and talk COVID-19 after the quick commercial break.
Introducing Arise Play, the #1 streaming channel from the heart of Africa. Celebrating Black talent and excellence in the world of entertainment. Blockbuster movies.
I make this look good.
Popular TV series.
Let the game begin.
Live music. Behind the scene action.
Head on over to Arise Play and let's get woke together. My new series Woke is exclusively on Arise Play.
Plus so much more. Yes! What are you waiting for? Download the app. Or visit the website today to subscribe. Join a new world of entertainment. Arise Play. Beyond streaming.
All right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adeso Amara is here. Adeso, great to have you.
Thank you, Rufai. Good morning, and good morning, Dr. Bati and Chunju.
Good morning.
Well, the world is inching closer to 160 million coronavirus infections globally. Well, the World Health Organization says while COVID-19 cases have seen a plateau and decline in some places, and mostly globally, the numbers are still too high and continue to climb in some areas. There have been 5.4 million new cases and nearly 90,000 deaths worldwide in the past week alone. Now, the global health body, which is the WHO, says it is all too familiar. In the past year, where countries experienced a downward trend in the pandemic, they relaxed public health and social measures too quickly, only to see the numbers rise. Now, cases are on the rise in South Asia, particularly in India. Here in Nigeria, 49 new cases have been recorded officially by the NCDC in the last 24 hours. The Federal Capital Territory saw the most infections with 27 cases. No deaths were recorded from the COVID-19 in Nigeria in the last 24 hours. Now, vaccination update shows an additional 31,545 people were inoculated in the last 24 hours to bring the national total to 1.697 million people. That's the breakdown percentage by states. Now, in view of the fragile state of the nation's health system, as well as the disruption of COVID-19 vaccines delivery and the lack of compliance with the public health and social measures put in place here in Nigeria, the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19 has produced a new implementation guideline for Phase 4 of the eased restrictions of COVID-19 lockdown and reimposed nationwide curfew earlier put in place to control the spread of the virus. According to the PSC, if you can see what mostly they've done, they have reimposed nationwide curfew, as I said. It has also limited gatherings, especially in enclosed spaces, to a maximum of 50 persons, urging state governments to inaugurate mobile courts to trial offenders. Persons without face masks will no longer be allowed into government institutions, while the PSC also directed security agencies to enforce the use of face masks and non-pharmaceutical intervention in transportation sector. There are no restrictions on intrastate travels. All gatherings linked to religious events should be limited to less than 50% capacity. Bars, nightclubs should remain closed indefinitely. It added that only essential international travels would be encouraged. Hotels and restaurants are to remain open. However, restaurants are to operate at 50% capacity. Drive-thrus and takeouts are advised. Schools are to remain open with regular antigen-based rapid tests also advised. Now, this phase restriction of movement should come into effect midnight today. Well, on his part, during that briefing, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, said returning passengers who fled the quarantine facilities, guys, listen to this. They fled the facilities and violated compulsory requirements. He said they will not go unpunished. He noted that the committee had received several reports of persons who recently returned to the country violating the mandatory quarantine requirements under the advisory by escaping from those facilities. It beats me every time I hear this. Quickly out of Nigeria, the COVID-19 variant in India has made it to the unenviable list of the WHO's variants of concern. The B1617 COVID-19 variant, which was first detected in India, was declared by WHO's technical lead of COVID-19 during a briefing yesterday. Now, it joins three other variants. Those are first detected in Britain, South Africa, and Brazil. When a variant is listed as a variant of concern, it means that it indicates, it shows evidence of increased transmissibility or evidence of increased severity, and of course, it's under the closest watch by health officials. Finally, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration said it was amending the emergency use authorization to include millions of children aged 12 to 15 to get vaccinated against COVID-19. You'll recall that Canada became the first country to do so last week. Now, the U.S. has joined to widen its inoculation against this virus. Okay,
let's start with India. Now, interesting news coming from India. Now the WHO has said that the variant B1617 is a variant of concern because it has a high rate of transmissibility. And because of that, it poses a threat to the rest of the world. But what is the option for the government of India? The big issue, as we discussed yesterday when you brought, a similar subject, is that, look, beyond what Swaminathan, the chief WHO scientist in India, pointed out, is that government itself is not enforcing the basic rules. Mm-hmm. They have more or less, been negligent in terms of managing the situation. And there is this lobby in India that India needs to go into a national lockdown.
Yes.
Would that national lockdown help? Mm-hmm. Now that the WHO has said, look, the variant B1617 is a variant of concern, which poses a threat, not just to India, but the entire world. Mm-hmm. I hope that pressure will be mounted, will be put on India, the leadership, to go into a national lockdown. And we'll see how that helps. Second, medical experts in India are worried about the resort to cow dung. Many Indians now think that cow dung is a solution. But the position of the scientists is that, in fact, that resort to cow dung is even helping to spread more diseases in India. So you have a national public health crisis in India that the government needs to look into beyond religious festivals and political rallies and absolute negligence in terms of what faces the country. Now, the WHO, through Dr. Ghebreyesus and the WHO Foundation, they've launched what they call Together for India campaign. And under that Together for India campaign, countries are expected to donate oxygen cylinders and to provide funds to support India in this moment of crisis. But the residual point is that the people of India themselves and the government of India will need to take the situation they have on their hands far more seriously. Because it looks at this moment that while the world is taking Panadol for India's malaria headache, ailment, the leadership in India appears to be grossly negligent.
Yes.
Now, to the second point about Nigeria declaring phase 4 restrictions, well, my view is that perhaps all of those measures articulated by the Presidential Steering Committee perhaps do not even go far enough. If you look around Nigeria, people have moved on. People tell you in ordinary conversation that, oh, that time we had the COVID-19. Most Nigerians are not aware that COVID-19 is still there. They go to parties, they engage, they do not observe the protocols. So it's not enough for the Presidential Steering Committee to roll out those phase 4 regulations and guidelines. It is important at the subnational level to enforce those guidelines. And I hope that in issuing the statement yesterday, that the Presidential Steering Committee are taking the step to engage the subnationals. In this regard, I mean the states, other stakeholders. Otherwise, you will find some states that will say, no, there's no COVID in our state, and we are fine. And you have people partying, and you have clubs opening, you have restaurants out there, you have places of religious worship accommodating people beyond the 50% threshold that has been declared. So these are the issues. It's about the enforcement. It's just like every policy in Nigeria. The problem is always implementation, and will the people listen? Because Nigerians are very skeptical about COVID-19. You talk to another average Nigerian, he or she will tell you, these are COVID-19 guidelines. They just want to use it to make money. That's how bad it is. There is an element of corruption, a perception of corruption ingrained in the average Nigerian mentality.
Okay. I mean, I had a lot to say, but I just hope time will allow to say this. I want to know the state of the vaccination. Have they started the second phase of vaccination in Nigeria? Because nobody's saying it. You've just given people the first jab. Nobody's saying anything about the second jab. Do we have vaccines coming in? Where's the state of vaccination? Because you can put in all those measures if people are not getting vaccinated. Because nobody's talking about vaccination again. We've forgotten it.
Well, I don't think that's totally correct. Vaccination updates, like I bring you the figures every day. We have a little over 4 million doses. So states have been ordered to stop once they reach 50% capacity so that those who have had their first dose can have a second dose.
Have they
As for the
now?
second phase, we do not know when our next shipment will come. We've been told sometime between May and June. So second phase is still far from now, Rufai. We're still talking about second doses for those who have had their first dose.
You say May and June, but we're May already. We're getting the middle of May already at this one.
I know.
It is well. Thank you so much, as always. I really appreciate you at this one.
All right.
All right. We'll move on to Michael Wilson now. We take Michael. Michael, great to have you. Morning.
Morning. So those sort of inflation worries, really, the markets are very, very schizophrenic about it. We're going to get a big scare in the United States later in the week when they have their CPI figures, their consumer price inflation. Very cautious about this. I've been banging on for weeks now about the base effects from last year's drop. Here we are. We'll see a sharp rise in commodities, especially oil prices, not oil prices as in crude oil prices, but as in oil prices that people pay at the petrol that people pay at the pumps, the fuel that they pay at their pumps, because these April figures will be relatively high. I warn you about that. So we shouldn't jump to conclusions about a big spike in inflation coming. Asia Pacific roundup, particularly tech stocks fell yesterday. I'll come on to that in a second. That dragged Asia down. Japanese declined as well. Officials in China at last that the once-in-a-decade census, the population of the mainland has in fact shrunk. On those figures, it's down 0.53% is growth. Now it's usually 0.57%, so very, very slightly. And China prides itself on a big community, a big population. That's what keeps growth going. Still with China, Ant is going to help test the digital yuan. Alibaba's owner, the Bank of China, has distributed several $1 million worth of digital yuan through an app that's connected to 6 major state-owned. But that's part of Ant as well, so it's helping them there. Ant has not actually confirmed this, but has said merely that the bank may be involved with trials and research around the digital yuan. Japan's SoftBank is about to invest $2.3 billion into one of Britain's fastest-growing tech companies, the Hut Group. SoftBank is run by Masayoshi Son, who's the richest man in Japan. Hut Group started off selling DVDs in Manchester, actually, and now it's very, very heavily online. Not only does it's actually quite clever, because what it does is it helps people develop their own companies online as well. You were talking about the continuing very worrying outbreaks of the pandemic in India. It's now a global threat, quite rightly too. The WHO is saying it's now called a triple mutant, which is very, very worrying indeed. So far, the financial markets, though, have braved what's been going on there. Investors are apparently quite cautious to be out of the market because they think it could revive any time. The view is generally amongst market commentators, this is not the view of health officials, though, this is market commentators saying that it may peak within the next few weeks, but it will be a difficult time for then. So on to a US recap then, and that big non-farm payroll miss on Friday, we're still going on about that. That's still actually affecting the markets because there was a feeling that takes care of any inflation worries because of a tight labour market. Well, it may do, but Citigroup and also Goldman Sachs downgraded tech stocks, and that took Alphabet and Facebook saying they should be neutral. They're neither pessimistic nor optimistic about them, but they are. They feel as though that there's not a lot of future in them right now. When Goldman and Citibank start to say those kind of things, then you can see why people get out of that. So Wall Street basically in a wait-and-see mood over inflationary pressures. As I said, we'll get those CPI figures. Fears that the COVID-19 variant in India could overtake global growth. I happen to think it will, but we'll see what happens there. Biden has been warning on work shy. The doctor and I talked yesterday about whether or not the furlough scheme and the amount of money paid into the economy in the United States is saying people, well, why should I work? Because the government's paying me money. Well, Biden has said if they don't take an offer for what he describes as a suitable job, then they will lose unemployment benefits. And as we know, that job growth actually slowed, showing those figures. US Boeing's 77 MAX is back under again. More than 6 months after the 73 MAX was cleared to fly by regulators, they've discovered more potential electrical problems. Deliveries of more aircraft have been suspended. The affair gives new energy to those who felt that the Boeing 737 MAX was allowed back into service prematurely, and there's issues which could have been to 2 fatal crashes have not been fully analysed yet or addressed. Onto cryptocurrencies as well. This is Ethereum this time, or Ether, as it's called, not Bitcoin, but Ether, surging past 4,000 on Monday to a new record high. It is the digital token of Ethereum. According to Coinmetrics, it now has a market value of 483 billion. Bitcoin is at 1.09 trillion now. I merely give you that information. Again, I think we've exhaustively discussed the fact that these are not necessarily ought to be holding one's wealth. UK sterling at the highest level since February, and that's because of the elections that actually happened here and better outlook. The Queen's speech today. Boris Johnson will be. We think he'll be sort of. They've got this 5-year programme for when elections ought to take place. David Cameron brought that in. He's going to break that. There's a fear that there might be the feeling that there might be an election in 2023. That's putting sterling up, and a receding chance of Scottish independence. What about those Friday afternoons when you've got to stress yourself out with Zoom calls? Well, HSBC is trying to get to a Zoom-free Friday, and they want, in an effort to tackle stress caused by working from home during the pandemic. They've had a lot of complaints about that. In fact, this is an ongoing thing, isn't it? An ongoing thing about how the hybrid system will actually work. Should it be working in the office? Should it be working at home? Apple, UK customers should be compensated for breaches of competition law legal action claims. It's filed by the UK Competition Appeal Tribunal called CAT, and it alleges that Apple's 30% commission that it charges on app sales is an abuse of dominance and unlawful. Apple entirely predicted, because says this claim is meritless. As far as commodities are concerned, oil prices slightly higher after the Colonial Pipeline business. Can't really see why that is, because that's not, as we were saying yesterday, not affecting crude oil. It's affecting supply of refined products, The group allegedly behind it have said they're not trying to make a political point, they just want to make some money. So that's brought people to think that maybe that this is the last of what we're going to see as far as that particular pipeline attack's concerned. And gold prices, well, hovering near 3-year highs. Again, we're waiting very much on inflation as far as gold's concerned, because it does, of course, hold its value more than currencies do. And we'll be seeing whether that disappointing jobs number is a one-off. That will affect the value of gold. At the moment, it's all very much wait and see. That's your global view.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I want to comment on President Biden and trying to get people back to work. It might be a bit of a challenge, because he's the one in January who signed an executive order giving people a federally guaranteed right to turn down work if they feel that that workspace jeopardizes their health. So now people can conveniently use COVID-19 as an excuse, or maybe not an excuse. Some people actually are worried who haven't been vaccinated and what have you. And there's also the CARES Act of last year, which also gives people the right to turn down work without relinquishing their employment benefits. So I think the answer there is to just really focus on the advocacy and the vaccine drive and make people feel safe to get back in the water. If you've watched Jaws, you know what I mean by that. And also the issue of childcare for parents who cannot go back to work because their children's school schedules are still up in arms in parts of America. So I don't think they should really be cracking the whip at this point. People, I'm sure, do want to go back to work, even though, yes, the pandemic unemployment benefits are quite generous.
Yeah, if you want me to comment on that, I mean, he's cracking the whip at the moment. He's cracking the whip at the moment because he's seen, it's been brought home to him how difficult it is to get this kind of legislation through. So he's cracking the whip to get Republican votes. At the same time, the Democrats, his own party, will not be in favour of what he's doing for precisely the reasons that you've been elucidating. Childcare is extremely complicated, and childcare has come to the fore, obviously, with everything being closed. And of course, parents are saying, well, we can't go back to work because we've got to look after our children. If the situation with regard to the pandemic and infections and so on is not actually cleared up, if we haven't all been vaccinated, then we're still concerned about this. So I think that President Biden is finding that it's pretty complicated life out there as a politician. I think you're absolutely right.
Well, very quickly, Michael, a number of issues. First, what's your assessment of the American president's response to the attack on Colonial Pipelines, about 5,500 miles of pipelines, by the group called, the criminal cyber group called DarkSide. Well, DarkSide says they are apolitical and that there's no connection with Russia. But what's the update on that? And has that had any effect beyond the energy sector in the United States? And secondly, the point that Tunu raised about job seekers relying on employment benefits and the president saying that, oh, well, if you get a suitable job and you don't take it, then the state will come after you. Is that realizable? Is that really possible? I know that in the UK, there are persons who just collect employment benefits, and even when they get jobs, they don't want to work. They live on benefits forever. So what is the challenge there of that welfareist, approach? And then quickly in China, Meituan, the food delivery conglomerate, is under pressure. Just because the head of that conglomerate posted a poem, a 7th century poem, and that is considered to be critical of the state. Even after the fact that the guy deleted it, the state still went immediately after May 20 and, continued with the antitrust, anti-competition investigations against that conglomerate. Before now, it was Alibaba. Now he's the head of Meituan. I mean, what kind of dictatorship do they run in China? And nobody can even speak or promote literature.
I'm with you. Yes, I mean, I've been saying, that's my view about it. If you want to live in an autocratic society, what place does that have in the 21st century that you can't actually say something which is critical of one's governing bodies and politicians who are not elected, of course, in China? What does that say about the society as a whole? So I think that's pretty. I think that's pretty alarming. As far as Biden's concerned, yes, of course, people take advantage of benefit and so on if it's set at a certain level. And politicians have had to act very, very quickly. We did say, I think, at the time that it's unwinding these things is where the problem is. It's like QE. It's not a question of setting these things up and saying we're now going to print money and give it away. How do you actually let the air out of the balloon gently without it flying away? That's the problem. Yes, of course, people take advantage of benefit. They've been doing that for years in the United Kingdom. You're absolutely right. They've been actually saying to themselves, why should I bother going to work for a few pennies more that I'm actually getting on benefits? And that's one of the arguments about a minimum wage. It makes staying off work as attractive as actually going to work. Do you actually want to flog round a care home or a hospital ward earning just a few pennies more than you do on benefit? Probably the answer to that is no. The pipeline, yeah. So that what happened in the pipe again? I'm rather surprised. I think the oil producers are trying this on a bit. Actually, as I keep saying, it's not about crude oil. It's about refined products, and it's about getting those around the country. So the United States administration was very quick over the weekend to put into law the ability across 18 states to transport oil by road. So they're actually getting it to the pumps. Will there be a shortage? There may well be, but we're not quite in the driving season yet. I've got no idea of what the motives of dark side are, whatever they call themselves. If it's just students having a prank, then well, it worked and they got their money. They're saying that they're not politically affiliated. They may be. I just simply don't know. We live in that kind of world. We were talking about cybercrime yesterday. Is it necessary to defend yourself? Yes, it absolutely is. I
mean, great insight there, Michael. But really, two quick questions. We keep talking about electric cars. There's a report that came out recently that said electric cars will be cheaper than fossil fuel-based cars by 2027. That's a couple of years away, like 5-6 years away from now. Has it finally come home to roost? I mean, the end of oil? Because once electric cars are cheaper, the question you start to ask is, why did it for fossil fuel? And secondly, so for some weird reason, I was reading out a paper this morning called the Des Moines Register out of Iowa that had a story talking about John Deere, the tractor maker, saying they cannot meet demands because the agricultural sector has started to boom again in America post-pandemic. Is that a good sign that the economy is back on? And can agriculture be that silver bullet?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you travel around, I've not done it myself, but if you travel around the wheatlands of the United States, those enormous states which seem to go on forever, agriculture has been hit very, very hard by cheap imports. If John Deere is actually saying that they are not able to meet demand, then good. I mean, I think that the United States will be looking at agriculture as being a strategic industry. Why is it not? And also, it's very cognizant of the fact that China and Japan both need extensive exports from the United States into those two countries to keep their own economies going, simply for food and rice, and rice in particular from Texas. As far as
okay, Michael. The other story was on electric cars and fossil fuel. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. I really appreciate you.